So good evening, everyone. I am William Johnson, Chair of the Baltimore County Blue Ribbon Commission on Ethics and Accountability. It's my pleasure to welcome my fellow commissioners and also members of the public who are viewing the session to this meeting of the Baltimore County Blue Ribbon Commission on Ethics and Accountability. During this meeting, we will hear from the Montgomery County and Baltimore City Inspectors General about the operations of their offices. And we'll hear updates about the work of our subcommittees and the research work presented before by the Schaefer Center for Public Policy. Before we get started, I want to remind everyone about housekeeping items. The first being that this session is being recorded. The agenda for tonight's meeting was shared with the members of the commission directly, and it's also posted on the commission's website. That website is www.blueribbonethics.ubalt.edu. That's ubalt.edu. The meeting is scheduled to conclude at 8:30. If we cover the agenda items before then, the meeting will close early. All agendas, minutes, meeting links, and commission materials will be posted on the commission's website. We will not be responding to comments or questions posted in the chat. Any questions or comments can be shared with the commission by email at blueribbonethics@ubalt.edu. Commission members will have the opportunity to ask questions or comment during the meeting and can do so by raising your hand or using the raise hand function in Zoom. And so with that, let's move to a review of our minutes of the previous meeting. Those minutes were provided to commission members by email earlier this week. And so do any of the commission members have any comments or changes to the drafted minutes? Okay, seeing none, if there are no corrections, can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I move.
Okay, Tom has moved to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
A second.
Okay, who was that? I'm sorry.
Joanne.
Joanne. Okay, thank you, Joanne. So thank you for that. So the minutes are approved as distributed. And so we're going to move on then to our presentations for tonight. Tonight we will start with hearing from the Inspectors General from Montgomery County and Baltimore City about how their offices operate and other information. So both were provided with a list of questions reflecting many of the issues that we have heard about at our previous meetings, such as the presence of independent legal counsel, the rights of people being interviewed for investigations, and waiting times for subpoenas. I'm going to suggest that we let each make their presentations with only clarifying questions during that time. And then we've reserved time at the end for follow-up questions and discussion by the commission. And so first up, and we want to welcome and thank her for joining us, is Megan Lamazzi, who is Inspector General for Montgomery County. And prior to this position, she was clerk of the Montgomery Council and Inspector General for the Maryland Department of Health. She's also a former prosecutor and worked as an Assistant Attorney General. And so, Megan, thank you for joining us. Good to see you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It's nice to see you again. Will and I got to work together when I was on the state level. So thank you for the introduction. I am happy to be here and to tell you a bit about my office. I was appointed the Inspector General for Montgomery County in 2019. I finished the last 2 years or so of my predecessor's second term, and I was reappointed unanimously by the council last summer for my own first 4-year term, and then I'm eligible for one more 4-year term. So I have been the Inspector General in Montgomery County for about a little over 3 years right now. I am sure at this point you have heard the adage, once you have seen one Inspector General's office, you have seen one Inspector General's office. So you know already we are very different, but we do all uphold the same principles. We are rooted in independence, objectivity, integrity, and accountability. So though I am differently organized, our core missions really do track across agencies, municipalities, states, and even in the federal system. The Office of Montgomery County Inspector General is a little older than the other offices in Maryland. We are actually celebrating our 25th anniversary this month. So it is a rather established office. We are different from other local offices of Inspector General in Maryland in that not only do we conduct investigations into fraud, waste, abuse, and mismanagement, but I have an audit mandate, which requires that we perform a rotating, systematic, risk-based set of audits of every principal department in county government. There are 24. Similar to, and if anyone's familiar with the state system, OLA, the Office of Legislative Audits. We also are required to perform proactive reviews, inspections, evaluations, and that is required to further our mission of enhancing the effectiveness and efficiency of county government. Under my enabling statute, I am required 6 months after appointment to put together a 4-year work plan. That's very similar to a lot of federal inspectors general that will have a work plan that details the proactive work that our office is going to do. That is a published, publicly available document. It really serves to put departments and programs on notice that will be coming through and doing some proactive work in their spaces. Another difference that is noteworthy is my office has authority over not only county government, but the Housing Opportunities Commission of Montgomery County, Montgomery College, which is our community college, and the Board of Education and Montgomery County Public Schools. That means we have oversight responsibility for the entire roughly $6 billion operating budget that the county puts forth each year. That encompasses over 35,000 public employees and about $13 billion worth of capital projects. So it is a tall order. I have the questions that were presented. I'm going to try to keep going through them as comprehensively as I can. My office currently has 17 full-time employees. It is a more than triple the number since I took office in 2019. The driving force behind the rapid growth of my office, though, is that audit mandate that I mentioned to you. In 2019, when I came into my position, there was a pending bill that created that audit mandate. And soon after I came in, the council passed that mandate, that bill expanding our responsibilities. And so a lot of the growth of the office is attributable to our increase in audit responsibility. I will say that I think regardless of that, our office would have grown quite a bit in this time period because there really was our increase in portfolio. Our oversight of Montgomery County Public Schools literally came in the last hours of the General Assembly session in 2020 before they shut down for the pandemic. Also, Montgomery County, the council and the county executive really had an appetite in 2019 and 2020 for increased oversight following a multi-million-dollar embezzlement scheme that had occurred in the county. So we have grown substantially. Under my work plan and projected budget and staffing plan, we anticipate that we will grow to approximately 25 full-time employees by the end of my term, which is in 2025. One of the questions I was asked about was how we have legal counsel. Under the county charter, the county attorney's office is tasked with providing legal opinion, legal services to county government. And so that means that the county attorney handles my legal matters and serves as my counsel. However, my statute has two other options for legal counsel. The first is that the Office of the County Attorney could employ special counsel. Under the county charter, they can get a contract with maybe a firm. A lot of that has been done in, think the opioid crisis. County has gone out and gotten other counsel for that. So the Office of the County Attorney could employ special counsel for the Inspector General's office, but that attorney would still be under the oversight and guidance of the county attorney's office. Alternatively, under my enabling statute, the Inspector General can employ and be represented by special legal counsel separate and distinct from the county attorney's office if the IG finds that counsel is necessary to effectively perform their duties. The county attorney is given the opportunity to comment on the qualifications of the attorney that the Inspector General selects. And lastly, the council approves the Inspector General's decision and makes sure we have funding, and would have to give a special appropriation if our budget couldn't already cover that. So we have a number of mechanisms that have been built into our statute related to legal counsel.
Ms.
Our
Nawaki,
office-
has that ever happened? I know, I'm hope this, Mr. Chair, this is a clarifying question. Has that ever happened?
Not to my knowledge, not certainly since I've been there. The county attorney and I have been able to navigate potential conflicts over my past 3 years.
Has option 2 ever happened, a separate counsel employed by the county attorney, or has it only been option 1, if you will, the county attorney has represented you?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Our office is, the work of our office is governed by internal policies and procedures that were developed by our leadership team with input from staff. We have a policy and procedures manual for the overall functionality of the office, and then we have 2 separate addendas for each division. Again, I have a separate audit division. Under my statute, I'm required to follow government standards. So I follow government auditing standards. It's sometimes referred to as the yellow book, which is incredibly stringent. So we have a whole separate policies and procedures for that side of the house to ensure that we are compliant with the standards. Investigations, inspections, evaluations has a separate addenda. And then we of course have an administrative manual that we follow. It is modeled. I talked about the audit addenda. The investigations addenda really is modeled off of the Green Book that you've heard about, the Association of Inspectors General Principles and Standards. And we certainly consulted with a number of other offices and their policies and procedures. You know, you never want to start from scratch. You want to base it on tried and true and tested areas. A number of people on my staff have worked in other offices of Inspector General. I headed a different office, so we had a lot to work with as we put together our policies and procedures. I was asked a number of questions related to investigations. So my next set of information, really, I want to be clear, is narrowed to that function. I talked a lot about all the other proactive work that we have to do. We follow a different procedure for how we handle all of those pieces. So when I was asked about how we initiate investigations, that is based on the authority and the determination of the Inspector General. They can be self-generated. They can come from a tip to our hotline. Sometimes an audit or review may lead to a fraud concern. And so we have to open up a fraud investigation. So there are a number of mechanisms and ways that we may initiate an investigation. Under county law, we have no limitations on what we could open and look into. Whether we are engaged or not engaged in investigation, what the allegations may be, what the results are looking like, remain completely confidential until the completion of an investigation and the public issuance of a report. It really, really is critical to maintain the integrity of an investigation at all times and to protect anyone who may be falsely accused, to protect persons who are cooperating with your office. And so we really do have a strict confidentiality provision. Our statute, of course, also says we have to maintain confidentiality of anyone who comes forward if we had a whistleblower. And we want to be sure that we are protecting those interests and the integrity of the investigation at any point. specifically in regards to interviewing, we gather our facts of an investigation, and I see Isabel's here now, and she always says it very, we just follow the facts. We go where the facts take us, and that's where it ends. So we perform investigations by gathering documents and searching through information and doing interviews. And when you do an interview, when you receive documentation in our office, we create a work paper. That's how we document what has been said. And after you do an interview, there's a lot that goes into it afterward, a lot of analysis that's required, a lot of needing to corroborate a statement, or perhaps an interview then informs the next set of questions you ask of the next person that you interview. So it's all part of the investigatory process and record. And we don't disclose our work papers during the course of an investigation. If someone were to request my work papers, to request my investigatory file, we would have to analyze that in compliance with the Public Information Act. And I would really argue from the outset that disclosure during an open investigation is not in the public interest, and that really is the threshold question under the MPIA. So, there are also exceptions for investigative records. So I was asked in the questions that we were provided, we were asked about giving our work, I call it a work paper, the summary of an interview to someone. And I would tell you that I think that is damaging it would be damaging to the integrity of an investigation. It would concern me. And so we don't do that in my office. I talked about when we're conducting investigations, we have to gather information, data, contracts. We analyze transactions in the financial system, accounts payable, whatever we're pulling. Under the county code, the Inspector General is entitled to any documents, data, and information they determine necessary to perform their duties. There's nothing else in the statute. It is unrestricted. Before I go on to the report phase of an investigation, are there any questions thus far? Okay. So then after you've done your investigation, again, I'm only talking about how we do investigation. We get to the reporting function and the reporting phase. My enabling statute only lays out how we give notice before publication or give an opportunity to respond. It's only required of work plan items. So again, those are those announced proactive engagements that we do. They've probably gone on for months, and we've had a great deal of discussion in real time about what's going on. When I came in and I took over in the OIG, I made the decision that we would follow a similar process to what is outlined in the statute for announced work plan items for investigations as well. But it really is at my discretion, depending on the subject, depending on exigent circumstances, that we may deviate. But generally, we will finish an investigation and we will provide the relevant officials an opportunity to review an investigative report in advance of publication. Again, that's not required. That's a decision that I have made, is how we're going to function. If we have recommendations, sometimes we may do an investigation and it will actually lead to recommendations of changes in policy or procedure that could have prevented the perception of wrongdoing or could have prevented the wrongdoing. We may have a recommendation there. We want to see if the administration has a response to that. But the time frame to review and respond to an investigation is very limited. It's usually about a week. And then I'll incorporate any response that we receive into the finalized report. Before it is published, like a work plan item, the work plan items I'm required to provide advance notice to the elected officials in the county, really so they're not blindsided and they have a chance to read it and to ask me questions. So they can call and say, Megan, what is this? What is going on? What have they done to correct it already? Whatever questions they may have. I usually do that by an encrypted email. And I leave it with the elected officials roughly 2 to 3 days. And then I will publish my report. There have been instances, of course, during investigations where we have gathered information that is an immediate danger to the county. So we may need to stop some harm, stop the bleeding, you could think of it, but think of it as like cybersecurity is a definite place where if we need the county to not lock something down right away, we may divulge that during the course of the investigation, but otherwise, they really don't know that we're doing an investigation, what we're looking at, or what the allegations are until they see the draft report.
Megan, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I think there was a question that may be directly related.
Sure.
Joanne.
Yeah, I had just a quick question around reports. Are they all publicized, or are there ever instances where you've done a report and it's just kind of internal? I'm assuming that would still be requested through PIA, but again, it's not released to the public widely.
Under my statute, if the subject or the matter of the report could pose a danger to the county to be released. So again, cybersecurity is a real easy one to point to. We would, and that was in a work plan item, I'm not required to publish. So I wouldn't publish in an investigation either. When I talk about published reports, those are the reports that we put out and make public on our website, forward facing. Sometimes we may do an investigation and it may lead to a management alert. It may not be a full investigative memo or report. And those sometimes are not then put on the website. Okay. I was asked about extensions to respond. That comes up a lot more in my larger audits. If we've done something with 7, 8, 9, 10 recommendations. I work very closely with the deputy chief administrative officer. And so she may call me and say, we've got this going on and this going on and this going on, and I really need another week. I try to entertain those requests as best I can, but it is critical that offices of Inspector General reports are timely and are relevant. And if it is in any way a request to delay for a political reason, we have to maintain an apolitical stance. And that can be the reason why we're delaying things. I have had 1 or 2 instances where we've extended response times. One was to an investigation and it really was only a couple of days. And it was a very, very large investigation related to people getting differential pay during COVID that they weren't entitled to. And it really was a very large scheme. So that is the one time that I had done that. On to ethics. Ethics in Montgomery County is a separate office. There is an ethics commission. It has its own executive director. He reports to the executive branch. The commission is made up of appointed residents who are volunteers on the commission. The main way that I interact with the ethics commission is under the ethics statute in Montgomery County. If the ethics commission believes that there is enough evidence to open an investigation into a potential ethics violation, then they have to start an investigation. They don't have their own investigatory staff. They can ask the Office of the Inspector General to serve as the investigatory staff for them. They can go to the county council and ask for an appropriation to hire someone. In certain circumstances, they could ask the county attorney's office for help. I have done several investigations on behalf of the Ethics Commission under their authorities. In large part because it seems crazy if I have the bandwidth, it would be inappropriate to have the county spend more money to go out and hire someone else if we could do it. So we have done work for them. That though is not mine. So I do findings of fact and I present a report to the commission. The commission then moves forward. Only the commission can determine if there was a violation of the ethics law. That's their bailiwick. So we just serve as investigatory fact finders in support of the commission, but that is my only interaction with them. Oversight of my office, I really do remain responsible wholly to the residents of Montgomery County. The Inspector General is appointed by the council. The process of appointing an Inspector General is laid out in my statute as well. There is a resident, a citizen panel that is volunteer, that is impaneled to serve as the hiring committee, if you will. They have to then put forward a few names to the council interviews and they select. So that is laid out. I can only be removed for cause, dereliction of duty, commission of a felony. That requires a supermajority of the council. My budget in Montgomery County, county executive proposes the budget, council approves it. Council has full authority to increase, decrease the budget as they see fit or choose. So my statute requires that when the council passes the budget each year, they have to have language in it that essentially sets a baseline saying, we'll get at least what we got this year, next year. And they project out. So the intention of that mechanism is to make sure that we do something people really don't like, they don't all of a sudden gut our office the next year. So it is required that we have that stabilization. We really are truly an independent office. We are seated in county government in the legislative branch. We follow county HR policies, fiscal policies, but I have my own administrative staff that handles most of that as we go forward. When I craft my work plan each 4-year term, the statute says I should consult with the elected officials, with local stakeholders, employee groups for potential projects on the work plan. But the decision of what goes in the work plan is purely rests with the Inspector General. There is no requirement, no one signs off on it, no one approves it. It is something that is completely independent and put out by my office. I do meet with the council's audit committee. By council resolution, we meet roughly 3-4 times a year to talk about the recent work that we've done, any work I can talk about that we are currently engaged in. Right now, we've recently put out a trend analysis of our recommendations so that we can work through that in their oversight capacities. So those are the oversight parameters, the way people check in, how I'm held accountable for the work that we do. But it really is an independent office. The Inspector General is put in place and left to do the work that they've been hired to do. The last question I was asked is about reimbursing legal fees for someone who comes to a meeting with the Inspector General. I'm not aware that the county has ever done that. I'm not aware that anyone's ever asked for that. Under county law, all employees, contractors are required to provide information and meet with us, and failure to do so can result in a Class A misdemeanor violation. You could be subject to disciplinary action. So I haven't heard of anyone bringing counsel or asking for that. If an employee chose to bring their own counsel, that would be something they did as a private matter and would be up to them, I think. The very last thing I had was just our access to documentation. Again, we're entitled to anything. We can ask for it and get anything that we need. We have to comply with any public disclosure requirements. So though I could get, for example, something that may be attorney-client privileged, I too am the client. I am the county, so we are the client also, but I couldn't, I'd have to work very carefully in how we would discuss that or how the limitations would come into play in any reporting that we did moving forward. But otherwise, we really do have unfettered access. I think I hit on all of your questions.
Ms. Chairman or Ms. Lamarzi, can I ask two questions? So one's extremely narrow, one's broader. The very narrow one relates to what did you say whether during your interviews, et cetera, how are those memorialized? Is there a transcription? Are there notes? Do you record them? What's the sort of process by which you keep track of that sort of information that you obtain when you bring someone in to have a conversation with your office?
Specifically in an investigation?
Yes, exactly.
Sure. In an investigation, we do not currently record our interviews. So it is notes. We always work in pairs. So
Yeah.
you can have two different people working through it. And under our policies and procedures,
Mhm.
one person is already designated to really be the note taker as you go
Yeah.
through.
Mhm.
They both have to sign off on, and then the supervisor and the deputy will eventually sign off on all of the work papers for.
Yeah. Is it your view that
Completeness.
you could record them, or you could record them only with consent of the interviewee? Or, I'm just wondering how you got to where you are.
The office traditionally has not
Mhm.
recorded. It's something that I've been considering if it would be in our interest to implement that. Obviously, under Maryland law, we'd have requirements to follow if you're going to record. There are a number of requirements. There's also a pending AP administrative procedure in Montgomery County right now related to using county property to make recordings. And I need to see how that plays out before we can figure things out.
Thank you. My bigger question, which is a really entirely different topic. When you started at the beginning, so as I understand it, the Inspector General and the auditor function are together, that you're responsible for both the IG function and the auditing function. You said clearly that the Ethics Commission is separate, but the auditing and IG are together. Is that correct?
So under the county charter, there is an internal auditor in the county executive's office.
Mhm.
And that individual is tasked with similar but different responsibilities.
Mhm.
My audit mandate is that I perform a risk-based, department by department, rotating assessment of the financial controls and internal processes, as well as audit high-risk contracts and agreements. So we have to go to every department. And the thinking there really is that not only does the county want targeted audits, they want to make sure that you really do check out every department, that someone isn't hidden in there. So it is risk-based auditing still. So when we get into each department, we have to do that.
But I presume that your plan, I'm very familiar with the idea of an audit office having an audit plan, a multi-year plan. You get line up the departments in a particular order and you get to them in a cycle and all those sorts of things. So if I looked at your plan, is that largely in the audit side? I assume that investigations are ad hoc, are they not? They come up when people raise them through any number of means, presumably the public, the ethics board, tip lines, et cetera, et cetera. Is that correct?
Sure. Investigations absolutely are ad hoc, but if you look at my work plan, you'll see that we have planned evaluations, inspections, reviews of different programs in the county. So for example, we just recently today issued a report on a follow-up to previous recommendations related to the alcoholic beverage services and the controls that they've implemented for inventory.
Right.
We did an entire project on fleet and how fleet is managed in the county. We did background checks in the recreation department. So my work plan consists of, yes, the audits that we have to do under our mandate, but it also consists of these proactive evaluations that we have to do, which are different programs. Sometimes you may get a complaint about something, start an investigation, determine whatever everyone's upset about isn't actually illegal, isn't a violation, but the policies, procedures, everything around it need a lot of work and need testing in some other way. That would then be a proactive review that we would do. That's announced. Everyone knows we're out there.
And just for one more moment, is there any way to distinguish between your function and the function you described in the other, I forget what you said, at the other auditing function, and had a name that you mentioned, I'm sorry.
Sure, the internal auditor.
Yeah.
So they have more of an advisory function, depending on how they follow, which standards they follow. If they follow Red Book is what a lot of internal auditors use, or Yellow
Right.
Book.
Right.
They're supposed to, most internal audit shops follow up on previous recommendations and corrective actions to determine whether those have been implemented. They're driven much more by what the executive's office has chosen to be looked at, not what a risk assessment or outside independent individual has chosen to look at.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Joanne?
Yes, I've got like a few questions, but one, do you have any authority over quasi, like if you are tipped off and it's regarding a quasi-government entity? So I'm trying to think of an example. I'm forgetting the name of the agency that receives a ton of local government funding. You know, are you able to investigate there, or?
We have certain outside agencies that were responsible. So Housing Opportunities Commission, great example. They receive actually a very small amount of county funding, much more state, but under legislation passed in the General Assembly, we have authority over the Housing Opportunities Commission. There are certain county employees that function in maybe like a public-private partnership kind of scenario.
Yeah.
So the Revenue Authority is an example in Montgomery County. They run all of our golf courses and things like that. So we do have certain authorities over that.
Okay. And then, I mean, none of these questions are related, but when you are investigating and you've notified an employee that you're calling them in for an interview, I mean, I guess, are you notifying them of any rights when you're, before you perform that interview? And are you notifying someone more senior to them? So like, let's say the agency head is the person that's being investigated, so maybe it's someone above them.
Right,
But
I would
what-
not, if we're investigating someone's manager and we want to talk to the person that works for that person, certainly we want to make sure that the manager is not aware, and that could taint evidence, that could lead to retaliation. We have to be very careful, and we'll say, come to our office, we'll meet you somewhere, we'll do it on Teams, or we'll do it on your, after hours, before, whatever works, so that we can protect them.
Okay. And obviously your office has been, I mean, you're celebrating your 25th year. So I'm guessing there's not as much concern, but I guess what would you say employee, I don't know what you say, temperament is with your office? Do they feel, I mean, there should be some fear, but are they afraid of you when they're called in for an investigation? I guess I'm just trying
I've
to.
never heard that.
Never, because I've never heard much negative either. Okay. Thank you. I probably have more, but I'll be right.
And we'll go ahead and entertain any other questions for Megan. Megan, I believe you're going to have to leave. If not,
I am gonna have to leave at 6:30, but everyone does have my contact information. Please feel free to reach out if you have other questions. I'm always happy to talk about my office. I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud of the work we do and the people I've hired. And I did come into a well-established office. It had been around for 25 years, but it still needed a rejuvenation and an update. And we're working on a lot of different projects. It's a very exciting time. So I'm happy to tell you all about it.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a follow-up question to one of Joanne's questions? I don't know if anybody else is in the queue ahead of me, so I don't want to butt in.
No, not so far. You can go ahead, John.
Thank you. Megan, I understand what you said about, not notifying a supervisor who is the subject of the complaint. I mean, but is there any other protocol when that supervisor is not related to the inquiry? Meaning, is there any sort of chain of command process? So the issue has to do with Department A, but an employee in Department B is believed to have some information because of what that employee has some interaction with Department A. So now you go say, would you please come talk with us? Is there any notification, any process or anything when that person's management or supervisors have, essentially no connection to the matter? Is there any protocol in that situation?
No,
Okay.
no, I again, you really do want to maintain the integrity of your office.
Mhm.
If everyone has to report out to various supervisors, that really has a chilling effect. And that sends the message that the administration has no trust, faith, or confidence in the Inspector General, or doesn't support an independent fact-finding mission. And I think it's really critical that you have that environment where it is not frowned upon, it is not discouraged, that folks feel comfortable that they can come forward or talk to us or answer our questions, and that it's just a regular part. I mean, most of the documents they have, they're not theirs, right? They're the county's. And pretty much everyone who's doing the right thing wants to make sure everyone else is doing the right thing.
And thank you. And did you say do you have sort of you bring someone in for that kind of a conversation? You said you have policy manual, procedures, et cetera. Is there sort of a one-page, is there sort of okay, Ms. Smith, you're here today because we asked you to come. We are the Office of the Inspector General. Here's who we are. Here's what we do. Here's what this is about. Here's what your potential risk is as an employee. You are, and I'm not a criminal lawyer, but you are not a target. You are only is there a ritual that sort of organizes all that, or you just say, hey, come in and talk, and if they have questions, they have questions, and you do your best to answer them?
I think it really depends. I mean, we're not law enforcement.
Right.
We aren't there to perform a law enforcement function. No one else, I think I have one other person who works for me is even a lawyer. It really depends. And there are strategies for how you build rapport when you conduct an interview. And those are determinations that the investigator who's been trained, who's following the basic standards, you have to rely on your staff. They know what they're doing. They're going to do the right thing and explain things. We're really not there for a gotcha exercise all the time. It is sometimes we really just need to understand what's happened.
Gotcha. All right. Again, thank you very much.
Certainly.
Joanne, you can continue.
You can have it. So I have two very short clarifying questions because I just want to make sure I'm capturing those correctly. So you mentioned a 4-year work plan that is made public. Does the 4-year work plan in any way kind of provide some guidance on like how your office functions, right? So department heads know that this is what triggers an investigation. Yeah, because I guess in Baltimore County, it seems like there's some confusion around how the office functions and what's actually happening. So I guess it's what's in the 4-year plan outside of, what's in the 4-year plan?
4-year plan really is our strategic goals. Here's how the office is structured. This is the work we anticipate. It is on the website. I'm happy to send a link so everyone can find it. It requires a budget analysis, projected budget, staffing plan. We have a lot of interaction with department directors. When I came in as the Inspector General, I met with every single one of them personally. A lot of them have changed and we're now about to have an election, so it may change again, who's in charge. We have a lot of interaction because of the audit function. So before we even begin an audit, we have a lot of introductory discussions. I meet with the department heads. I have a number of mechanisms built in to maintain open dialogue with the administration. I meet with the Chief Administrative Officer quarterly. I meet with the Deputy Administrative Officer monthly, just to talk about here's where we are, here's what we're doing, this is when this will be done, this is an issue. And also, hey, I heard this, what's going on? What's been happening? I mean, we really do have a very open dialogue. So no is the short, I'm taking too long to say. The work plan doesn't have that information in it, but we certainly are able to have a lot of opportunities where we converse with people. And outreach is a huge part that I haven't been able to do over the last 3 years. Pandemic has really stifled me. So our goals are to get out to county employees, to get to staff meetings, and to explain a lot more of who we are and what we do. You know, some folks have the full map. I'm sure Isabel tells you they have the whole map of how the investigation goes. We had that at one point. We've taken it down. It wasn't. We're working on a few things, but
Thank you.
Any other questions for Inspector Lamazi? No. If not, thank you so very much. You've shared a wealth of information, and we're very appreciative of it. If there are any follow-up questions, we'll make sure that we get those to you, including any links that we may want to the county's website. So again, thank you very much, and thanks for your service.
thank you so much. Very nice to be here.
And so we're going to move to our next presenter, who is here, and we're happy to see Inspector Isabel Cumming, Inspector General for Baltimore City. Immediately prior to this position, she was Assistant Inspector General of Investigations for the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority. And her experience also includes work at the Prince George's County State's Attorney's Office and the Maryland State Prosecutor's Office. So thank you, Inspector Cumming, and we'll turn the floor over to you.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. I just didn't know if I was a moot or not. Thank you very much for having me. I truly appreciate it, and it means a lot. When I was watching before, I could see everybody, but now I can only see, is that the way it's set up for now, or is my computer just messed up? Though, because right now I can only see you.
It's probably because you're spotlighted.
Oh, okay. Thank you. All right, well, now I just see you, so that's good too. I just want to make sure I didn't set it up incorrectly.
Miss
So-
Cumming,
You may have it
Yes.
on speaker view instead of gallery view. That would be
Yes.
my guess. And
How
that
do
would be clicking in the upper right-hand corner and it's going from speaker to gallery.
From speaker to gallery. Oh, well, that just made me added, no, I don't think I did that right. Okay, I'm definitely showing off my limited technology.
Well, I've shown off all of mine right there. so I don't feel bad,
I've actually
but-
watched every one, so I do feel better. But okay, I will just, actually now you're the person I'm looking at. So this, so I do, like I said, I truly do appreciate being here. Like my name is Isabel, and I am the 5th Inspector General for Baltimore City in their history. This office, I know Megan is at 25. My office was established actually in July of 2005. So we've actually had a pretty interesting history. I am the first person, though, to serve as an independent Inspector General since the public voted for that in 2018 by 83% of the vote. And again, the public is actually going to be voting again in Baltimore because you know, I'm not a very political person, and I learned that when the laws are set up, and I had nothing to do with the original setup law, many times you have to fine tune things. And one of the things that is being fine tuned is the advisory board. And it's going to try to make an advisory board that's much more citizen based than what I have now. Because as you go in this position, you learn that the office is successful because we're basically structured as the people's investigator. And I think that's important for me to note to all of you. We have no audit at all in our office. And that was set up from the beginning because the comptroller of Baltimore City actually has an audit staff of 40 people. So all audits are done through them. And in fact, the word audit, when they were making the law, was stricken from the law. You know, we are the investigators. And I think that's important to note. So I watched Baltimore County start this new office and was really thrilled when the executive order was completed and when an IG was selected. Just for disclosure, I first met Inspector General Madigan in 2019, when we worked together on the mayor of Baltimore's case. And I thought she was a good choice. I have actually testified in front of Baltimore County's council because when they set up the office of the Inspector General, he didn't give her the title of Inspector General. And I know that sounds, but it's actually incredibly important because even though I was on the board of the Association of Inspector Generals, I could not get Inspector General Madigan in to become a certified Inspector General because of the way it was titled. So I testified that that needed to be changed, and I was very grateful. Unanimously, Baltimore County Council changed it to Inspector General, and I think that's very important because I know that was an important issue during the election that year. So I know that's what people wanted. So I believe the language that was setting up, because I read it, set up her law was actually quite good. I also testified in front of the Blue Ribbon Commission in Atlanta when they were setting up their Inspector General's office. And I think Director Cotton sent all of you that, 'cause I wanted to make sure you saw it, because they spent a lot of time and a lot of money doing that investigation into how to set up an office. And they ended up actually setting up an office pretty similar to my office, but ironically, the exception of the advisory board. So their advisory board was completely different. And now ironically, we modeled our new advisory board similar to theirs. So I thought that I would answer the questions that I was asked, and then any questions you all have of me, I'm more than happy to talk about the office too. So we're all pretty proud of, the offices, and they're all like I think Stephen Street said, we're all a little different. So the questions I was asked was, first, how many staff members I have, and have I had any staffing changes through the time? Well, I started with 6 people, but I had 10 positions because my office was actually vacant for 18 months. And a lot of people had no idea what the Inspector General was and what they did. Our budget when I started was $1.2 million. Immediately upon starting, I was given 3 additional pins. And come a time when we added whistleblower and ethics. So I also am the ethics director. And so now my office has 18 pins and a budget of $2.4 million. Okay. The next question I was asked was whether I had an independent legal counsel and what form it takes. At the current time, I do not have independent legal counsel, but this is something we are hoping to add in the next year. And I'll be honest, it has become an issue in my office. On one occasion, we had to work with a solicitor to bring in outside counsel to help with the case. But the best model, from talking to many inspector generals throughout the United States, is when the office has their own counsel. Because, the solicitor, their job is many times the mayor or the county executive's counsel. And sometimes those don't have the same mission, I should say. All right, do I have written policies and procedures? How are they developed, and who has access to them? Absolutely, yes. We have an inter-office policy of policies and procedures. It's much more detailed, 90 pages, and goes into our investigative techniques and stuff. That's only available to our staff. And that's actually reviewed by the Association of Inspector Generals when they do their peer reviews, because that's an important part of being an Inspector General, that your office has a peer review. So you're reviewed by other Inspector General offices. But we also have a 30-page public policy and procedure manual, which anything that I could have put out there that the public would need, we put out on our website. And that's to help the public understand what we do, because that is definitely an important part. The next thing I was asked was how I initiate investigations. Do I need an outside prompt, such as a complaint, or can I use my own initiative? Is notice of a pending investigation provided to leadership And if so, is it writing or verbal? And are interviewees informed of the subject of an investigation? Very good questions. I actually have an executive staff and weekly meeting where we review the hotline complaints because we have a very robust hotline. And it started, I'll tell you, it started with 70. We had used to get 70 complaints a year. And I think Inspector General Madigan, I heard, was like up to 140, which is great. We now, the last 3 or 4 years, have been over 700. And in fact, this year, we're if it continues what we're at, we're going to be at 900. So with that type of complaints coming in all the time, and also I think it's important to know that of the 800, the ones that actually we review to see if it's a matter that's under a jurisdiction, and then we do a pending investigation, and then we do a full investigation because we have limited resources and we want to use the office to the best of the ability we have. So no one is ever aware of the investigation, nor do I ever confirm or deny there is an ongoing investigation. Because if I did, my office could be used as a weapon. And even when people have asked me to do an investigation or anything like that, I have never, and it's been in the newspaper, I've never confirmed or denied till an investigation is over that we're actually doing an investigation. And I think that's, sometimes people have gone to the press and said they're doing an investigation, but you'll never hear anyone from my office agreeing that it did. Most interviewees, almost all, are not aware of the subject of an investigation. Like Megan said, we just write someone an email or reach out to them and have them come into the office for an interview. Or just like Megan, we've done interviews everywhere. We try to work with, the situation we're given so that people are very comfortable coming to the office. Okay, next one. What rights do individuals involved in an investigation have? This includes subject of the investigation, witnesses, issuing who can attend an interview. Are interviews allowed to record the meeting, or interviews provided? A written summary or other record of the meeting? Well, the answer to this is very limited. The only person that ever attends meetings are union reps who don't speak during the proceeding, okay? And very, very rarely we will have people bring an attorney who cannot answer for their client. They may sit there, but the interview is with the person. Now, we do tape record all of our interviews, and we do not let other people tape record. We have never given a summary or a copy of the recording during the normal course of an investigation, unless it becomes a legal proceeding, and then by laws we have to do that. Now, I think it's important to note that before we start any investigation, at any interview, we have a whole litany, a whole warning system that we do, and it's signed by the person. We also, at the end of every interview, on the record too, we ask them, has this office treated you fairly? Do you have, and we asked, was this recording ever stopped? We asked, has anyone promised you, told you, blah, everything we put on the record, and we actually have them sign. And we try to be, we do a lot of these because talking to many inspector generals, it's actually protection for both of us. Because if someone said something and it becomes an issue, there's a recording for both sides.
Isabel, can I just ask you quickly?
Of course.
If someone said, I do not want you to record this, you would say, sorry, that's the way it is. You can leave the room, but if you want to stay here and talk, it's going to be recorded. I'm just trying to understand the role of the recording in this process.
Yeah, I believe when I first started, there may have been one, maybe two that were not recorded. But since then, we have really found it to be a safeguard for both sides.
I understand, but if
yeah.
someone said, Ms. Cumming, I am really just not, I'll be glad to talk to you, but I'm not going to let you record this. Do you say, sorry, those are the procedures here? Or maybe it hasn't happened, but even if it hasn't, let's just pretend that it has. What would the office do in response to that?
Well, I think it would depend if it was a subject, or if they refuse to consent, we would take copious notes. We would note that. We would probably have them sign a document to say that, just always trying to be as consistent and fair as possible. Now that's only if there are instances when we're out in the field and we have to do, when we're dealing with confidential informants, that there's situations that we don't. So, it's not like every person that talks to the Office of the Inspector General would. It's more if it's a formal interview, then we do normally record.
And are you saying that there's no circumstance in which someone who's been recorded ever has access to that recording, no matter what happens after that point? It's solely yours and never available to the person who's been part of the conversation?
No, I said that if there's legal proceedings and stuff, then they're given at that time. I think that would be, and of course, through the MPIA, they can be requested. Have they given, again, because my lawyer is the solicitor, that's his department, and I don't know. I would give the law department what they would request from me, and then they determine that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And as we go along, we all learn. It's all, we're all trying to make these the best offices possible. So it has been a learning experience for everybody. Okay. The next question was, do you have unrestricted access to city data and information? And if not, what types of restrictions do you face? I do have unrestricted access. A few times there have been persons in government that may not believe that, and we then would issue a subpoena, and I've never not received the information that I need. Is there a waiting period before you can issue a subpoena? Absolutely not. What would I wait for? I don't know. I don't understand that. But next question. Who receives the draft reports? Is notice provided that a draft report will be forthcoming? And if so, how is notice provided and how far in advance of the report? This is a long question, so I'm going to kind of break it up. Our draft reports are sent to the mayor, the city administrator, and the solicitor, and any department head who the report may be about. There is no notice. No one knows. I'm not going to say my report should be done in 2 weeks. No, they just get the report and then they're given time. Okay. And then it says, do the recipients of the report receive a set period of time to respond? If so, can they request an extension? And if so, what's the process for requesting an extension? Are there limits on the number of extensions? Okay. Yes, there are. So normally, things are different when it's an elected official, because of course elected officials, it's slightly different because their oversight is actually the public. But in all of our normal cases, you're given 2 weeks to respond. We do grant one extension, and then the report would be released upon that time to the public. But the caveat is if you haven't responded, you have got a week, past your extension date, then we would tell them that as soon as we get your response, we will publish it. Because I don't, it's not like if we have to publish it because the deadline's over, we're not ever going to publish your response. No. If it took, for whatever reason, longer time, we will definitely publish the response and put it on the website as soon as we get it. And we've done that. What is the relationship between your office and the City Ethics Commission? I am by law the executive director of the Ethics Board. I have one full-time attorney who I have delegated by law, delegated that role to. And we actually have a staff also in the ethics department. And my special agents in the office are the investigators for the ethics department as well. Now, who has oversight of your office? What types of oversight authorities does this person or body have? Well, since the law changed in 2018, I actually don't have oversight of the operations of the OIG beyond my professional peer review and a general evaluation that's performed by my advisory board. They do an evaluation of me. They don't do a evaluation of cases. That is not done. The law is clear that our advisory board is not an oversight board. Now, if my actions result in a persistent failure to perform the duties, a misconduct in office, or conduct prejudicial to proper administration of justice, then just like Megan, this advisory board can remove the Inspector General by a vote of 4 out of the 5 members of the advisory board. And the last one is, do I have an advisory committee? Yes, that I do. But right now, my advisory board was made up of the mayor, the council president, the comptroller, the solicitor, and an elected city council person. Baltimore City has been through many changes in the 4 years I've served. Had 3 mayors, 3 council presidents, 2 comptrollers, 3 solicitors, and numerous elected officials. And each one of those positions has been in some part an investigation of my office. So as a result of that inherent conflict of interest, the issue was brought up and it was brought forth to the city council that the advisory board should become citizen-based with nobody that is an elected official and nobody that is works for the city, works for or falls under my elective jurisdiction. And that is now before the citizens of Baltimore. It's called Question I. And we're very hopeful that will happen because it's a perception that, and what I care so much about is, as you know, I get so many hotline complaints. We don't ever want someone to say, I can't report something to the Inspector General because, can't report about, the city council person because they sit on her board, or, and this is not about me at all. This is about the next Inspector General, the future of the office. We want to make this better. So that was something that was, even when, and the irony was my board had actually never met until I had been in for 3 years, because when I was in Atlanta, I was telling them all about the office, and we got to the advisory board. I laid out, and they said to me, how does that change from you going from the mayor to now 5 elected officials? And I said, yeah, well, they never met, so I don't know, And then when it came time to meet, I realized that actually it really truly is an inherent conflict of interest. But I was told from the beginning that it's a stepping stone, and you have to you make things better as you go along. So that's what we try to do. Okay, those are my questions. Now, what questions do you have of me?
Yes, Tom?
Yeah, I had one question about the access to independent counsel that you said you do not have, but you would like to have. And we heard from the Inspector General for Montgomery County, and there they have a procedure where the county attorney provides most of the legal advice, but if they get in a situation where they think they need outside legal advice, they can it sounds like they can go to the county council and request on a case-by-case basis that they be given access to independent counsel. A second way of doing it would just have it be a budget item and have the Inspector General just go to independent counsel when, you know, he or she believes it's appropriate. Do you have a preference for one of those two systems and mechanisms for, you know?
I, I, I think with our office, what we'll probably do is try to add take one of the positions and, you know, add that because we've had, you know, making the ethics board and the Office of the Inspector General, because we not only, we have whistleblower, we have the investigations, and we have ethics. And the legal ramifications of all of that has proven to be a lot. So I mean, I may be totally wrong, but I don't think that people would have that much of a problem with it, because there have been definite instances already where it has been a bit of a conflict and we've had to pay outside counsel and everything. So, and you know, lawyers on the outside are pretty darn expensive. So I think, you know, having someone on the inside that actually understands the nuances of the government and, you know, where we are, I think would be positive, rather than continuing to, you know, go with outside counsel if we have to, and trying to bring them up to speed on the intricacies of this area. And I think I think that will be the best way. But before I do anything, I'll do, I mean, my deputy, she's an attorney as well. She will do a tremendous amount of research on this to determine what would be the best for Baltimore City.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course.
Have you felt any conflict at all holding the role as executive director of ethics? Have you seen any conflict between the two functions, the ethics function and the IG function?
Well, in Baltimore City, ethics is incredibly robust in that we have over 2,800 people doing the disclosure forms. And then we have the lobbyists. I mean, it is absolutely a full-time job. Plus, ethics is so important, the training aspect and getting out and doing that it is definitely something that the actual Inspector General cannot do. You absolutely need someone to be the designated, you know, executive director, because it is a very, very a job that it doesn't ever stop. When it's time to do our financial disclosures, our phones ring off the hook. In fact, they actually publish, I think we were at 3,000, you know, hotline questions and everything. So it is an important thing. And if there is a conflict, you know, that's when we actually have to go out with an outside counsel and that type of thing. But I do think most places don't do both, but I think you have to understand in Baltimore City, the ethics prior to going to the Office of the Inspector General, they got no money for it. It was a part-time job for someone in legislative reference and with a zero budget. So ethics has to be the foundation of any good government. So when it came to the Office of the Inspector General, you know, I was incredibly grateful they also designated 2 full-time pins with it, so that, you know, and it's grown since then, but we can then really focus on ethics, because without ethics, what have we? I mean, it's so important. And that was voted unanimously by the city council. You know, they realized the importance of it and that money should be given for that. So when we have a conflict, we're very careful to make sure that, you know, if there's a conflict that, for instance, if it was something that I did an investigation of, then we absolutely seal off the ethics, and I don't know anything that's happening with that particular case. And we've had to do that. So.
Okay, thank you. I see Joanne's hand, and I think I saw Cindy go. Okay, so yeah, Joanne and then Cindy. Cindy, thank
Okay.
you.
Hear me? Hello.
Hi.
Your office is unique in that you are very visible, right? Like you, online, as a person, right, personally, but also the OIG has a Twitter page and so forth. And I think that is what has led to maybe the public, being more familiar with the office and, maybe submitting more complaints and so forth. But has that helped internally? Like, I guess, how does that, like, knowing that the public is so, sees you so much, they're very familiar with your office. I'm trying to come up with my words, but, does that, create some fear internally? I guess I'm just trying, because you function so differently, I guess,
Mhm.
what are the pros and cons more than anything? And, would that be something you recommend for some of the other IG offices? Like Montgomery County, I don't think has a presence as much. And Baltimore County, I don't think there's any pages that I'm aware of.
Well, Baltimore County does have a website. I know that. And I think she's on LinkedIn. But when we first started, we knew how important getting the buy-in of the public is. And if people don't know who to turn to, and there's a, and I will be honest with you, a lot of our hotline is because every person, we tell people where to go to. We never just say, it's not our jurisdiction, we can't help you. We tell them where to go to. And that's a part of government. And that's an important part of just telling people who you can turn to. And I not only do that, but we also follow up. We do referrals. Because sometimes people get caught in like the government loop. And I think in that way, we've tried to be so transparent. And in fact, we're just like Megan said, we're not a gotcha. In fact, we have published cases where we've saved people's jobs. And I think it's, you can't be the people's investigator if the people don't know who you are. And this office is about transparency. It's about accountability. It's about outreach. It's about trying to find the truth of whatever it is without politics. So I think that the ability to do the websites and that type of thing has actually been very positive. And in other jurisdictions such as Philadelphia, the bigger jurisdictions, Philadelphia, Miami-Dade, Director Streets, Inspector General Streets, New Orleans, unbelievable. I mean, they do incredible outreach to the public, and they all also have Twitter accounts. I mean, I learned from others. I think that when we started, we got some complaints that had been held, and then we immediately had it. So I had cases that were already there, and they ended up being successful, and people started finding out what the office did. And I think if people realize what your office does, that we're here for you, and that we can help. And in fact, like on our business cards, on the back of all my agents' business cards and everything is the hotline, and just, how to get a hold of us, because we're no good without the public being there. So, and many other office of inspector generals have asked, how can I do that? The public, and I said, well, you have to do your annual report. I mean, annual reports are so important, and to try to make them interesting. Right? I give Inspector General Madigan huge credit, because she came up with the return on investment that it costs the citizens of Baltimore County as much as a postage stamp. So then I took that from her and made it cost the same as a can of Old Bay. So, I mean, and people remember that. So, I mean, I think just making the office, you know, making people aware of what you do is important. So I think it's been a huge help, actually.
Thank you, Inspector General Cumming, for being here. I had a question that related to your staff. You've touched upon, of course, the concept of oversight with respect to the Inspector General herself. You've also mentioned your staff. At one point, you specifically mentioned, I believe you said that you have delegated the executive director duties with respect to the Ethics Commission to an individual, but you haven't gone as much into the other staff, but there's this staff. And my question is, to whom do they report? Do they report solely to you? Are you the only person with higher fire authority over those people? So for example, if somebody on your staff had interactions with someone in another department, it could relate to their work, it could relate to something else. Could that person go not only to you, but also perhaps to HR? I'm trying to understand whether this whole concept of oversight that relates to you, is your staff in a different bucket, or is it that they report solely to you, and then the check and balance on that, I guess, would be then the oversight of you? If you could just help me with that.
Okay, I'm enormously proud of my staff. I have one deputy. I have 4 assistant inspector generals, two of whom do investigations, one of whom helps with the IT, one of whom is the ethics director. Okay, and then underneath that, we have the special agents, we have the ethics staff, and then we have a administrative assistant and an executive assistant. So that's our staff. And they are, without question, an integral part of, I have, you know, sometimes I have to be the spokesman of my office, but they are the heart of the office, no question about it. As far as like the hiring, and I mean, just to give you an idea, when we hire people, it's very important that many people on my staff actually go through the interview process, so that there's like panels, because you know you have to have more of a, when you have 18, which is not huge, but it's a good size. We have to have cohesiveness within the office. So I include everybody, you know, from assistant inspector up. And sometimes when we were hiring the last deputy, we actually included special agents on the selection panel, because it is an important part. When there is, and then like, for instance, the lead agents supervise the special agents, and other people supervise. The executive staff is like under me, and I would do their evaluations. The evaluations of the special agents are done by the assistant inspector generals. So, and then all of it, evaluations and everything, goes to HR. That's all. We follow pretty much the exact same process of Baltimore City. And as far as whistleblower, for instance, we follow that law where someone can either go to the office of the inspector general, or it could be done by the parts of the Labor Commission. So there are other avenues of people to go to if someone didn't want to come to the office. And if anybody has a conflict, we usually have other people that can fill in. So we try to be, you know, very inclusive with the staff. Does that help?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Oh, good.
Thank you very much.
Do you have, you're the ethics commissioner, right? Are you an ethics commissioner?
I am, yes.
Okay. And how many people are on, just wondering, you have, because we have an ethics commission too.
Mhm.
and they're volunteers and we have 5 on ours. Do you have the same?
Exactly, yes.
Oh, okay. Just wondering. So we're very similar. Any others?
I was just wondering if you could share just kind of your thoughts with regard to advisory boards in general as it relate to inspectors general. I know you have an advisory board. You talked about Atlanta having one. I think Baltimore County does not, Montgomery County does not. So just in general, what's your feeling about advisory boards?
It's interesting, but I would about 85% don't have advisory boards. The, almost very few people, I mean, an oversight board is, are you talking, were you asking about oversight boards or advisory boards?
Well, in this case, advisory, because you said you have an advisory board. So, but you can talk about both.
I think advisory boards can actually be a positive in that, to me, I want to make sure I understand the community. And if the outreach is where your advisory board can really help you. And if you're doing something that the community, is concerned about, or the community wants more focus on, that's where the advisory board can really help. An advisory board wouldn't, and I don't know any oversight boards that would actually ever look at your cases. You have to maintain the integrity of that, and that has to be separate. But as a leader and as trying to be better, I mean, for me, I'm always trying to improve. There's a lot I can do better. So having a board of people that I don't ever have to investigate, because I mean, that puts you at an odd right from the beginning, but to hear other people's point of view and views, I think can be a win, personally, as long as, there's no internal type of agenda. Agendas are not good for anybody. If you're trying to make Baltimore County better and you have it randomly citizen-based, I see it could be positive. I see it could be very negative if that's not what they're trying to do. Yeah. But I think it's also important to lay out what the responsibility is. And they should understand from the beginning that you're not going to be able to review cases, and you're not going to be able to know confidential information. And it isn't that type of board. It's a board to make the outreach and the inspector general a stronger, positive presence in the community. That's the way I view it. And I think that's actually the way I view the inspector general. We all want, I know you all want good government. And so to make it better, I mean, even the advisory board, that was unanimously passed by the city council too. Yeah. So I think it's a goal for all of us.
Are there any other questions? I think I do have one other clarifying, and you may have clarified this, and I may just have missed it while I was taking notes when you said that you and that you neither confirm nor deny investigations. And I know that's with regard to any, releasing to the public that you're investigating anyone internally. Is that also the case with regards to city officials, supervisors, managers? If they're not part of the investigation,
Unless they gave me the case, because I really try to be very consistent throughout. And I would never be reporting back what's happening. That's not what we do at all. I can't tell anybody what is happening within the confines of the Office of the Inspector General till the report is actually issued. I never would give updates. And I mean, we've had many cases that came from elected officials too, but they don't get updates. Nobody gets updates. And if they choose to go out and say that they've given the Office of the Inspector General a case, I still won't confirm or deny it ever happened, because And I tell people that right from the beginning. I'm saying, we actually tell people you're going to get no updates if you get a complaint. All we acknowledge is that we received your complaint, and we're very consistent on that. I think fairness is very important, and I don't think the office would have the results we have if we weren't. And I really am grateful that you allowed me to speak, and I hope I help provide a little bit of insight into this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very
Yes.
much.
Thank you. I think you have been a great help. And thank you for your service as well, as we thank you.
Oh, thank you. I
Yeah.
love what I do. It's still just when I walk into City Hall, I'm just always amazed that, I have that opportunity, and I'm grateful.
Thank you. And if we have further questions, of course, we will reach out to you.
Please do. Please do. More than happy.
Thank you again.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay. So we will move on in our agenda to our subcommittee updates. The two subcommittees, one on organizational structure and accountability, and the other one policies, processes, and procedures, have each met a couple of times since our last full commission meeting. And we've asked if they would provide a short overview of the work they've done over the last 5 weeks. And so I want to start with Judge Cox, and thank you for being here.
Sure. We had an occasion to meet on, we've been on 3 separate occasions. We had one meeting, actually 2 meetings that were devoted to people who had reached out through one method or another and said that they wanted to talk to our subcommittee. We had 12 interviews scheduled at the first one, but of the 12, only 5 actually showed up and participated. We had another 2 the following week. And then by request, we had a meeting with the county auditor's office to talk about sort of how they intersect with the IG and what the synergies are there. We had a brief meeting and presentation through the county attorney's office. We had a representative from the county council asked to meet with us and present also. And we have one meeting scheduled still where the inspector general is going to come and talk to us with some follow-up information that she wished to share. And then we will get to the point of sort of drafting our thoughts and recommendations. I think it's fair to say that a couple of sort of just comments before we get to the meat of what the recommendations are going to be. I mean, it is clear from what we've talked about as a committee as a whole and from the subcommittee meetings that there are growing pains with a new organization and a new operation in the county. So some of what we're trying to sort through is what are growing pains, what are people's reactions, both positive and negative, to what is a very different process for them as they work through the growing pains, because what we're trying not to do is react to the reactions of people, whether they were comfortable or not with the process, but really look at some of the comments that we are getting and figuring out structurally, are we set up right? Are there things we could do to strengthen it? And there may be a sideline of things that come out that aren't structural recommendations, but maybe some suggestions about ways that this whole inspector general process can be better incorporated within county government, so people have clearer sets of expectations and understandings of how it's supposed to function. So our thought is to try and sort of sort through and get past what is maybe incident-based or personality-based and get to structural substance of how the office is going to operate. So I think we're close to the end of our fact-finding portion. We've talked a little bit about the time we may need and some concern about just the compression of our timeline right now, because it is taking a while to get things done. And I know within our group, we feel like we need some time that's just devoted to sort of synthesizing information and getting to recommendations.
Okay. Thank you. Any general questions for Jessica? We're not going to go into details, but any questions in general? Good. Okay. So thank you, and thank you, committee, for the work that you're doing. Brigadier General Burkhead chairs the Organizational Structure and Accountability Subcommittee, and she's not able to be with us tonight. And I'm not sure whether someone from that committee is prepared to share. Yes, Tom, great. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we're basically at about the same place as the other subcommittee. We're in the listening phase, information gathering phase. We have not begun our deliberations or, recommendation or formulating recommendations, but I assume that'll be coming soon. We've heard testimony from half a dozen or so county employees who wanted to, bring their concerns to this commission. And that was very, very useful. And the Schaefer Center has made available to us representatives of the Ethics Commission, representatives of the County Auditor's Office. We also heard from the county attorney and from the chairman of the county council, and all that was very helpful. In the case of the county council chair, we were kind of limited in terms of our time. We had 20 minutes blocked out for it. I think he was able to make all the comments he wanted to make. We might have had a few more questions, and we talked to him about the possibility of him coming back for another 15 or 20-minute session. Our next meeting is on Monday, and I think we're kind of moving along and are going to be able to meet the deadlines. And I'll ask John to add anything because
I thought that was an excellent report on the summary and the committee. I have a question, Mr. Chair, a slightly more general question about the committee's work. May I ask that, if that's okay?
Yes.
I just want to make sure, that the two chairs, Judge Cox and General Burkhead, have a pretty clear idea of where what's in one bucket and what's in the other. It's not going to be the end of the world if there's some overlap, obviously. And at the end of the day, I think the entire commission, the way it's set up, is that all of us are going to review each of the subcommittees' work and look at it all. So it'll all come together. But I just wondered to what extent the staff and the chairs feel like we have a pretty good feel of like what subcommittee A and subcommittee B. And maybe it's not a big deal, but I'm having a little bit of a hard time, sort of distinguishing in some respects as you get sort of closer to the middle, if you will, of some of the issues. So I'm just raising that for the group, for the leadership, and for the staff.
Would anyone like to respond?
I mean, I think that's a fair comment because we're all hearing the same sorts of things. And as you deliberate and sort of, work through where do you go with it, there is some overlap. I know the staff had prepared an outline of some suggested ways that we're supposed to go. And I think that it's one of the reasons I think that the three of us on our subcommittee need to sit down and really look at what's in our outline. Are there things that we feel we should be talking about that weren't within the outline? And is there's maybe just some feedback we would want to give to the other subcommittees since we've heard overlapping comments. It's a good point.
Okay, I'm sure it'll sort itself out. I just wondered, what discussion. I mean, there are, it's just in hearing all of these questions, all of which are the right questions, and we've heard really good information. I realize that like our subcommittee is not really focused on what's the experience like of someone who interviews with the, with the IG, the question we talked about tonight, and, policy, the process stuff, but I'm fine. Let's sort of see how it sorts itself out, and I'm sure it will be fine.
Okay. Did anyone else want to comment on that before we move on?
Not a comment, just a question about the subcommittee process too. I mean, as we are meeting to draft recommendations, I guess what support will be provided? So are we, the three subcommittee members, drafting our own recommendations, or will there be a staffer from, I guess, the Schaefer Center joining us? Just wanting to understand, if we're taking the lead on coming together and drafting things in a document and so forth.
And would you like to address that?
Yes, so the drafting of the recommendations is the work of the subcommittees. We're providing structure for how those recommendations are formatted. So we provided an overview of each of the issues and then how it fits into the overall report. But the subcommittees themselves will draft the recommendations. And if there's specific questions that we can provide answers to or research that you need, we can take care of that.
I was going to make a suggestion. I know like sometimes we're getting a million emails. Would it be possible to or I can do it on my end, like pull together the documents that have been sent to us. So not like feedback from the public necessarily, but things regarding our work, just kind of throwing it in a folder somewhere. Because it's hard on my end to keep track of them sometimes and I'm missing things. But if we could go to one place and just find everything, even if it's on the Blue Ribbon, website, and maybe it's like password section, that we can access, that would be really, really helpful.
And are you talking about the emails that we've sent with materials?
Yes.
Yes, we can find, we'll find a way to make them all accessible for you in one place.
Thank you.
Okay. So let me thank the subcommittees for the work that you're doing. That's really the meat of what we're doing. And so you're really doing the hard work. And I do appreciate that. And I'm sure that county executive appreciates that as well. And then we will have that opportunity to kind of let those recommendations cross over from one subcommittee to the other, and you'll be able to see where there's overlap, and then we'll come together as a whole to finalize it. And so it's kind of it may feel like we're flying a plane while we're building it or something like that, but in the end, I trust that it's going to come together, and we're grateful to the help of the Schaefer Center as well. So thank you, Tom.
Yeah, I had another question about the process. We've been getting letters from, members of the public with their thoughts and recommendations. And I know one of them had suggested that when our recommendations are in draft form, that we send them to the association for their comments. And of course, we're not bound by the recommendations. And a second person had also suggested that and said it's not uncommon to do something like that when you have a commission and you have experts that are assisting the commission. So I didn't see anything in the plan that we're going to do that, but I thought it's maybe something we should discuss. I can't really see any reason not to get that further input, but people may feel differently.
Well, I guess as the chair, let me hear from other persons as well.
I was going to say, if we are going to make it, if we're going to provide them with recommendations ahead of time so they can provide feedback, we might as well just also publicize. Like, I guess for me, it's, I don't want to exclude the public from that. So if we're giving, them access to it and they're able to give feedback, Baltimore County residents should be able to as well. I don't know if that's something that folks want, but I have as long as we're doing it where others can give feedback too, then I'd be fine with it. If not, I see no reason, since this is going to the council, there would be a bill and there would be a hearing. But if we want feedback in advance, I think we should open it more broadly so residents can weigh in too.
Any other thoughts with regards to this? And we also have to remember the time constraints that we're under. And so, we do want to get it to the county executive and county council on a timely basis as well. So,
and it may be something we tell them that there's, that if they want to get that feedback, they would have the option of doing that. Because I know we've asked for one extension. I know I'm worried about it. I'm worried about it on two fronts. One is, as Joanne said, I would hate to just offer the comment to one organization, although they certainly have expertise. It just seems to open up a little bit of a can of worms in my head.
I don't feel strongly that we should have a posting period on a draft, because frankly, we're not, and I think this is what maybe has been implied, this is not the final, we're just making a recommendation. So that's going to have to go through its process as well. And I guess also, and maybe we can revisit this as we go, but there's a relatively finite number of fields of recommendations here. I suppose if we were recommending the termination of the IG's office, which I'm presuming is not going to be a recommendation, that'd be one thing. But we've sort of been down this road. There are all of these different topics. They keep coming up as subject headings for discussions. And you can sort of do A or B or C or somewhere in between those. And I think we're just gonna, at some point, settle on what the majority of the commission thinks make the most sense, hopefully with some sort of consensus. I just don't know what comments on that would achieve. You know, that we haven't already sort of been through, you know, in terms of the process. And I would also feel that, you know, especially since we are not the final arbiter of anything, we're just helping as a panel of experts or people who've gotten up to speed on this to organize the issues and make some informed recommendations. And I'm mindful of the time as well. So it's not, I will say, it's not as though there has not been an adequate opportunity for public input. I have to say, I think the public input has been tremendous, absolutely tremendous. I mean, the folks who have sent us things and who have testified have given me, anyway, speaking for myself, a lot to think about in terms of what we're trying to do here. People feel very strongly about the value of the office and you know, the trying to support the purpose, but also make sure that it's done equitably. I mean, it's been very, very gratifying to see the number of people, county employees, non-employees, others who have been so thoughtful about trying to make this work as well as it can. So I feel like we've had quite a lot of input and discussion on these topics.
Okay. And I did see in the chat, Joanne's comment that if we are stuck on a particular recommendation, that perhaps we can reach out to some other organizations to get further input from those organizations. But we are making recommendations and not legislation or creating policy. And it's non-binding recommendations. So, you know, they will have opportunity to go to others for other advice if, you know, there's some question about what we end up recommending in the end. So, okay. If there's no other discussion on that, I'm going to go ahead and move on to our update on ethical climate survey and best practices, if that's okay with everyone. Okay. And so, Dr. Cotton, we're going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There we go. So I'm going to start with the ethical climate survey report. There was a request from the commission member that we add a number of responses to each chart and table in the report included and including the appendix. And we sent out updated copies of the reports this week to the members of the commission. We also added information about the statistical significance and in the findings section of the ethical climate survey report. Overall, the survey had a margin of error plus or minus 2.3% at the 95% confidence level. So that's very robust. The challenge that we have is that we really don't have a way to judge non-response bias in this case, because we don't know if there are people that didn't respond for a particular reason because they were concerned about responding and concerned about saying something. So with that, we do have a very good response rate, and assuming we have a representative response rate, we have the plus or minus 2.3%. For lots of the questions, though, we have so few responses that we can't assess statistical significance. And these are specifically the questions that relate to whether or not someone has made a complaint or whether they've been involved in an investigation. As you recall from the survey, the numbers of people that responded to those questions were very small. And because they're so small, we can't assess statistical significance. So we look at those responses as being informative and suggestive, but not statistically significant. And I think that we had mentioned that earlier as well. So we did look at statistical significance for all the questions when we had the range of the 25 item questions around ethical climate. And you remember this from back in August when we presented this. So we did look at statistical significance for this. And generally, the climate overall is neutral to positive with respect to ethical climate. A few agencies had responses that indicate that there were some concerns about unethical behavior. We did look at the statistical significance of the average response for each of the agencies, and we grouped them into 3 groups based on the agency size. So in group 1, respondents from health has statistically significant lower average scores on fire department, police, public works, and transportation. This means that the health department has generally experienced a slightly more ethical workplace. And then the next group, this is the group 2. Corrections has statistically significant higher average scores, meaning their workplace was considered to be slightly less ethical than budget and finance, aging, and information technology, so slightly more ethical concerns. And then in group 3, we have responses from the executive office had statistically significant lower average scores than responses from human resources, 911, environmental protection and sustainability, housing, community development, permits and approvals and inspections. And respondents from human resources had statistically significant lower scores than housing and community development. So what this really means overall is that generally the climate is neutral to positive in terms of ethical climate. And while there are statistically significant differences, I wouldn't pull out any of these agencies and say that there's a particular issue. I think one of the things that we see is that overall the climate, like I said, is neutral to slightly positive in terms of being ethical. And it really points to an opportunity for education and training more than pointing to there being a specific problem. And if anyone has a question about that, and all this is included in the updated report that we submitted. And then with our survey, with best practices report, as requested, we went back and fact checked all the data in the report from the 106 offices of Inspector General that were included in the data. In doing so, there were some minor adjustments that were made. We went ahead and also added the percentages you'll see in this example chart of how many OIG offices have access to materials. We included the percentages, and this is the percentage of the offices for which we have an answer. So remember that we're not, if an office isn't included in this count, it's not to say it doesn't exist. So we couldn't find that information publicly. So this should help you get a better feel for the relative distribution of a particular attribute. And that pretty much summarizes the changes that we made. And if anyone has any questions. Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Catton. And so there are no questions regarding that. Then we're going to move on to other commission business. And first, just a note that the Schaefer Center is preparing a revised schedule for writing and for editing the report that's due to the county. And that should be available to commission members next week at some point. Secondly, we currently have 2 more public meetings scheduled for the full commission. We don't have any other presentations scheduled for the full commission. Inspector Madigan is expected to speak, I believe, with each subcommittee next week about some issues specific to their focus area. And so is there anyone else, commission members expected or that you would like to hear from in a full session? If not, if there are no suggestions right now, what I'd like to do is to give you a chance to think about it and consider this. And if you identify anyone you'd like to hear from, if you can let me and the Schaefer Center know by next Friday, which would be October 28th, by email, that there's someone else you'd like to hear from. And if we don't hear from you by then, if there are no other suggestions by then, I would suggest that we cancel our next full commission meeting, which would be held on November 15th. And instead, we would meet again on November 29th. And what we're hoping that would do is free up a little more time for the subcommittees to do the work that you're doing. So is this acceptable to everyone? Anyone have any problems with that? Okay, so thumbs up. Okay. Okay. So thank you. So any other commission business that we need to discuss tonight? Or other questions, other concerns you may have? Okay, if not, that's the end of our agenda for tonight. rather robust agenda. I think we got through a lot. And so once again, on behalf of the county executive, Executive Oshesky, and citizens of Baltimore County, I want to thank the members of the commission for volunteering your time and your expertise to carry out the important work that this commission is doing. And so again, we would cancel our November 15th meeting unless on the by the 20th, we hear that there's someone else you want to hear from. We will let you know in ample time that meeting has been canceled, which would mean that our next meeting then would be on Tuesday, November 29th at 5:30 p.m. And then the Blue Ribbons Ethics website will be updated as soon as possible as well if the November 15th meeting is canceled, so that way the public will also be made aware. The meetings will be held on Zoom, of course, and members of the public can register to attend on our website at blueribbonethics.ubalt.edu. And so with that, if there are no other questions or concerns, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Okay, and a second?
Second.
Okay, and with that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you again and have a great night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.